Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. This is Nick coming back at you with another video. Today we're talking about some kind of conceptual models to help us comprehend the true nature of empirical knowledge. The word of the day, the term of the day is Plato's cave. Can be found, an analogy that can be found in Plato's Republic, a famous book from the ancient times. So we're looking at a fishbowl here, and this is essentially an analogy for empirical knowledge. What we think we know comes to us from someone else who thinks they know, and so on and so forth. But in reality, we're forming these opinions very confidently without access to the objective reality taking place outside of the fishbowl. Stick with me here, guys. So now we're moving to the image here of Plato's cave that can be found in Plato's Republic. And we have the difference between truth and illusion. So here's us down here inside the cave watching these shadows on the wall, and here's us down here watching the shadows on the wall being portrayed by this secret priest class. And in Plato's day, it's very similar, of course, to today. We have the rich oligarchic families who've been in power since our people were experiencing kingships and kind of what we see in the UK with the royal family. Essentially the same people, the richest people on earth. So the priest class, or you could say the media, or the rich people who control the TV, the 6 corporations who control all of our news, etc., they are projecting these shadows, and these shadows inherently are fallacious in that sense, because they do not serve truth necessarily. They serve perhaps the truth or the benefit of the priest class, and then the priest class, of course, is under the control of these oligarchies. And so we're being shown, or these lies or fallacies are being portrayed to us in the cave. And once we get a glimmer of truth, as humans so often do, we have this innate desire for self-discovery and the pursuit of truth. And so some of us eventually, inevitably, make it outside of the cave and discover the lies that we've been brought up by through indoctrination and acculturation, like we've talked in other videos. And that's essentially Plato. Plato has left the cave, the confines of his illusory, fallacious culture, distributed to him by the priest class being controlled by the oligarchies, rich people. And so he has discovered truth, and now he wants to share that with the world, the objective nature of reality. And that's a lot of what we're doing here today. So we're talking about Black Native Americans and hidden American history. So when we talk about Black people or Mexicans in the United States, because of how we've been brought up, we think of this story that they've portrayed to us, how Black people were slaves and they came from Africa. And it makes sense from our perspective because Black people live in Africa. But there are some archaeological representations of Black people that are ancient, thousands of years old, especially in the Olmec culture and many others of South America, indicating that Black people also lived in the Americas, South America, and even North America. And if you look closely at the phenotypic details of Black Americans and Black Africans, usually the Americans have a smaller nose, different style forehead. So you can tell who is who if you know what to look for. So I did a quick compilation here today of some historical representations of Native Americans, and we're just going to go through them together. And as we examine these pictures and depictions, we're going to be breaking down the fallacies and the delusions and the illusions distributed to us by the educational system, which has failed us numerous times, as well as the media apparatus. And these people, of course, don't have our best interests in mind. And that's why there's so many of these citizen scientists attempting to free the minds of our people, just like Plato and Socrates during his day. So yeah, we're just going to go through some of these pictures. Again, they are renditions, artist renditions of early explorers from Portugal, from Spain, from France. There's quite a number of them. And they're summarily dismissed quite often by academia. But when we look closely at these pictures, especially since I live in California, a lot of these facial structures look very familiar to the people in the Bay Area, Hunters Point, Oakland, EPA, what they call Ravenswood now. And even some of my own friends who are black African mystics who are actually native to the United States, and they identify as Cherokee Indian. So yeah, we see this pigmentation, very similar pigmentation of some of the people, South Americans, some of the older tribes that we still have in our history books. Jean-Baptiste, Portrait of Native Americans. We'll zoom in here. Continue on. There's quite a number of these. They're very interesting historical depictions. And the photographs are really great. And that's another issue that I find quite often in my research. These photos are monochromatic, so we kind of have a hard time identifying what color skin these people actually have, because that's another conflation that's often made in the history books given to us by the Western American schools. They make it seem as if it's only the red man, what they call the red Native American Indian, who we are all very familiar with, like the Redskins portrayal in popular football teams and things like that. But the Americas were extremely diverse, especially when we look into the Olmec. We have several different phenotypes, like facial structures, like Asian and South American Indian, which is very different from the North American red-skinned Indian. And so that's another thing that we have to kind of break down, one of those illusions, because the diversity of the Americas was extremely, extremely diverse. We had so many different types of cultures, heritages, skin tones. And in the history books now, they're starting to call it kind of like the ancient seafaring Moors, who are possibly the original Jews, and it's a really big topic. I encourage everyone to look into it if you're interested. So we're just going to keep going through here. The Indians of the Bay Area, San Francisco, 1816, a depiction, artist's rendition. There are a lot of these myths regarded as mythology by the white man, but essentially they're a true history passed down through oral tradition. And because of the politics surrounding title to the land and original ownership and different types of treaties, they regard these black Native American Indian mythologies as pure fiction, but they're not. We have archaeological evidence of the black phenotype, black faces, bone structures, and as well as heritage all over the United States, as well as Middle America, Mesoamerica, and South America. So we're going to keep going here. Here's another photo of Native Americans who are obviously of African descent. And now we're getting kind of into that mixing of the blood between the red and the South American Indian, as well as the original African phenotypes. Very interesting. Here's a really good one. You see the strong nose and the high cheekbones, very similar to the red Native American, and yet the skin tone and the lips and perhaps the eyes are more what we would consider black African. It's a Crow tribesman from 1873. So this is a nice one here. Let's see. This is kind of the facial structure that I was alluding to earlier with the California native black people, who the white man regard as mythological history. But indeed, California gets its name from Calafia, Queen Calafia, who is an African queen who ruled pretty much the entire West Coast. And these people, I find, have smaller noses and different eye and forehead structure. So that's how we can identify them. But of course, it's a very deep topic with a lot of information, and the phenotypes are pretty much the genetic expression. That's what we're using primarily to compare and contrast with some of the archaeological evidence left to us by the Olmec civilization in South America and Mesoamerica. Here's another one, Seminole Indian, Miami, Florida. So the story goes, my friend who is an African mystic, he used to tell me all the time about how the red Native American Indian, quote unquote, they were living kind of in the central United States, whereas the west and the east coasts were controlled by Queen Calafia on the west coast, and there was another black king who was controlling the east coast. So this makes a lot of sense with these people being in Florida. Okay, so this is a really great compilation. I'm not sure who made this one. Know Thyself. So yeah, nowadays we call of these people Latino and Hispanic, especially myself. And I was able to trace my true origins as a Native American culture called the Michoacan of South Texas. But my whole life I've just been called Mexican or Latin, Latino, Hispanic, Latin American, just like the black Africans. But really, Mexicans, as well as the great majority of quote-unquote black people, dark-skinned people, are actually Native Americans, and they've been given a different name through the process of acculturation in our schools, and our schools are controlled by the white governments, and so they give us these names to make it seem like we don't have title to the land and we're not entitled to these treaties that we have heard in the history books. Here's some more depictions of Native Americans in the recent past who identified with their roots. And now to us, just like in this picture, of course, they simply look African American because of the narrative that we've been told for so many years. Here's another one. Again, the monochromatic film makes it hard for us to identify what's really happening here. And we see again the lips and the nose and the eyes and the forehead are very characteristic of the black people who are native to the Americas. This is another great compilation. I'm not sure who made this. I don't see an author here. But yeah, it's just another facial comparison of James Brown with notable Native Americans. You got, I think that's Paul Mooney, and yeah, and the nose structure, very interesting. You don't see this. This is a type of nose structure that we see in the Olmec, right? The Aztec nose structure. You don't really see that in Africa. Very interesting. High cheekbones. The eyes, like almost Asian eyes, right? And that comes from the Olmec phenotypes, because there was a lot of interbreeding with the Asians from ancient China. Again, seafaring peoples. Alright, let's move along here. Oh, that must be it. So yeah, that's the last one. Alright, so yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed this video. It's a fascinating topic, one of my favorite topics, so hope everyone's doing well out there. If you have any questions, shoot them to me in the comments, DM me. Always willing to share information, especially if you have some family history, heritage information, or stuff your grandparents used to tell you. It's always really interesting when everybody helps me out with this research. So yeah, I hope you're doing well out there. See you in the next one.